Hi friends, Kiela here. So today's post is about, actually it goes back to the same conversation that I was addressing during my last post, but a different person uh, uh, chimed into this conversation and asked me a question that brought up a really, really good analogy, or not analogy, I'm sorry, really just experience that I want to share. So just to refresh, the original post, this was actually in one of my attorney mom groups, and there was a post in which one of the members of this group was asking for feedback from the other members because she'd been offended by something that someone said in a different group, and she wanted to know whether or not she was being overly sensitive. Okay. And the response at the point that I jumped into the conversation was there was a lot of response to it. I remember at the time, this was a few days ago, in a few hours period of time, there were something like 52 comments, and there were a lot of different responses. Some people thought, oh my God, he's a sexist asshole, and, whatever they had to say about that. And then some of the commenters were more of the opinion that you are being overly sensitive, that it was just a joke. It wasn't really geared toward women. In fact, to some extent, I agreed with that simply because he didn't, in the comment that he made, he said something about spouses, not wives. But the thing is, I didn't really care whether the comment was off or not. My take on it and the feedback that I provided really had to do with mindset. And here was my response. So ultimately, it doesn't matter what his intent is. And by him, I'm talking about the person that she was offended by. What matters is how you're reacting, which affects the quality of the experiences you're having with people. Learning to not take things like this personally, even if they are objectively rude, will improve your life. What's going on in someone else's mind is really not your business. What is your business is how you are reacting to it. The good news is that you can actually decide how to experience things like this as you move through the world. Wouldn't it be better if you could simply be amused rather than offended, or just neutral and unaffected? And I didn't get into any of the tools that a person uses to make these kinds of changes. But really it comes down to mindset, and there are a lot of resources and a lot of tools that people can use for that. And of course that's my specialty as a coach, is basically teaching people to do what I did, to master the tools that I've mastered in order to make those changes for myself. And the benefits of having made those changes are so phenomenal that I'm super excited to help other people do that too. So when I see a comment like this, I'm very likely to jump in. When someone, especially when they're asking for feedback. So there were a few responses. Some people, a couple of women who didn't, clearly didn't like my response. That's not uncommon. People tend to have. Some people will react as though I'm like blaming them, for the bad behavior. Or in these cases, they seem to be thinking that I was suggesting that she ignore the comments, which I'm really not doing. I'm not speaking to necessarily how she should handle that conversation, so much as suggesting that, there are things that she can do so that it doesn't upset her internally. And then honestly, when that's true, if you're able to not just keep your calm, but not actually be triggered by bad behavior on someone else's part, then you're actually in a better position to react in a way that is effective, that's influential, especially with regard to other people that are present that maybe don't already agree with you. Anyway, so that was all the past conversation that I was already addressing in the previous video. But another commenter hopped in later and had this question. I have to ask, is this what you would tell someone if a racist joke was made, or if there were a minority that was offended, that their mindset needs to change and that they should be amused by it? So I don't know if this is a legitimate question or not. I mean, from the perspective of the person asking it, because she's really putting words in my mouth that weren't part of what I said, what I intended. So let me clarify, first that I didn't say that actually. So I'm not saying, I never said, and I actually don't intend to say or think that the original poster needs to make any changes, or that she should be amused by the person's comment. Not at all. these are suggestions only in response to somebody who's asking for feedback. And the suggestion is, there's a better way actually to think about and to process bad behavior on someone else's part, whether it's objectively bad or not. I don't care. The point is really not about them and whether or not their behavior is bad. The point is, how's it making you feel? And you actually have control over, or you can take control. And it's sort of empowering to learn that you can take control of how you feel and take responsibility for how you feel and how you react to things that are going on in the outside world. So with that clarification, if I'm answering what I think is a legitimate question here, would I give that advice to somebody who, is basically talking about a racist joke? They themselves are minority. They feel like someone's being racist toward them. And I'll even take it to another step and say, you're the victim of a crime or of abuse. Okay. So yeah, actually, I very much would give that same advice. And, lest we think I'm talking about something other than personal experience, let me say this. I am a survivor of childhood abuse. Okay. So I can absolutely speak from the perspective of somebody who was abused. I was a child, clearly not my fault, clearly nothing I could or should have done differently. And that question of like, how should I feel about what was done to me? At this point, should I sit here and bemoan my fate and bemoan, dwell in and wallow in the pain, that caused me? Well, I could do that. That's my choice, certainly. And I really don't think that there is anybody else in the world who would have the right to tell me that I'm doing something wrong if that's how I chose to handle it. So I'm not sitting here in judgment of anybody who is processing an experience like that in that way, right? If that's how they're processing it, A, they may not know any better. B, it's their choice. And when I say may not know any better, what I mean is this: you do have a choice. You don't have to process it that way. And why would you choose to process it in a different way? Well, because that will allow you to actually heal and grow and improve and move beyond it. You take your power back and you make a different choice, right? And that's why I would suggest it. I myself have in fact done that and am still in the process of doing that with my own life and disappointments and, things that I've suffered and so forth. Okay. Another example that came to mind with, this particular question was my mother. So most people don't know this about me, but I am biracial. My mother is a light-skinned Black woman. And so we together had some very interesting experiences as I was growing up, because most people don't recognize that I'm mixed. Most people don't see me as any different at all than, just, whoever white person. So I've had some interesting experiences as a result, including this question, because clearly this person has no idea about my racial heritage. So here's the thing. My mom spent most of her adult life railing against the expression I think is raging against the machine. Okay. She did also participate in a fantastic organization called the Institute for the Healing of Racism. My mom is an educated person, was an open-minded person, I think, in a lot of ways. But she really was in a lot of ways in victim mindset. She didn't know any better than that. This is not a criticism at all. But what it meant is that she was absolutely miserable and angry so much of the time. Okay. And, she had been victimized. In fact, she had also been the victim of childhood abuse. She had been the victim of much racism, some of which I should say, I actually witnessed and observed personally, both when I was a child and later when I was older, because people didn't recognize, didn't understand, didn't appreciate that, when I was present in a situation that I'm her daughter. So they would treat her in ways, assuming that I was just a stranger, that I had no relationship to her. And so they would treat her in ways that they would never have done in front of another person who they believed was Black or related to, or, closely affiliated with her. So yeah, I've seen some pretty awful things, and I can say she absolutely was victimized and had every right to be offended and upset and all those things. But the question is whether processing it that way did her any good. Okay. And I would say no, and here's the thing. The sad thing is my mom and I can't talk about this anymore because she suffers from dementia. She's far gone to the disease. And so she's, honestly, basically like a toddler now. She doesn't, have the ability to, have these discussions. She barely recognizes me when I'm able to visit. She lives in Hawaii. I live in Texas, so I don't get to visit as often as I would like. But here's one of the sad truths. Her sister is her primary caretaker, and her sister once said something. I'm probably not going to get the quote exactly right, but after my mom, really declined, one of the things that my aunt said, and I guess it was by way of a silver lining, is, at least she's at peace now. So I'm getting goosebumps right now, just going back to that place. Here's the thing. All of that railing and all of that anger and all of that, negative energy didn't hurt anybody but her. If you need the world to change in order for you to heal, in order for you to be happy, in order for you to become successful, for you to succeed in business or in law or in life, then you've got a really serious problem, because it's not going to. And, especially when you're talking about a person who's racist or toxic or abusive, if you need them to change in order to change your life, in order to change your circumstances, then again, you've got a real serious problem, because that's probably not going to happen. Nobody's going to change because you need them to. That's the point. So, take your power back. This is about empowerment, not blame. So that's it, my 2 cents. And if what I have to say and my suggestions don't resonate with you, that's fine. Then, we're not a good fit for whatever it is, friendship, coaching, all of that. Just move along. You really don't have to be offended by anything I have to say. But, yeah, I mean, if this does resonate with you and you want to talk about it all, feel free to reach out. You can message me on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to have a connection call, because this is powerful stuff. And yeah, that's it. Bye now.